Let's rotate text in 3D for your Kinetic typography assignment in After Effects. So here's what the animation could look like, is we can rotate text in 3D along the x-axis to make it kind of flip down like this, or we could rotate it along the y-axis to make it flip out like that. And there's a whole bunch of other things we could do if we just change a couple keyframes or the anchor point or things like that. But in this video, I'll show you how to do this x-axis flip down animation. So to do that, I'm going to make a new composition. I'm going to make sure I give it a name. I'm going to call it Sample 3D Rotate. Always check to make sure your preset is the preset you're working on in your project. That controls the width, the height, the frame rate. Always make sure that the duration of your composition is what you want it at, and then click OK. So I'm going to add some text by clicking on the text tool up top. I'm just going to click once, and I'm going to type what I want it to say. So I'm going to write flip down like that. If I need to change the font, I'm going to go over to the character palette over here. Here's the font, here's the color, here's the size, here's the leading, here's the tracking. All your settings are going to be over here like this. Also, if you drew a text box or you want to change the alignment of the text inside its text box, you can go to paragraph. I have mine set to left align. It doesn't really matter for this little animation. The other thing you might want to do is you might want to align this text to the composition. So you might want it centered inside this frame here. So over here, I could click on the Align palette and it says Align Layers to Composition. If I click Center, now my text is centered in the composition. Could also do it vertically like that, but I kind of want it up here. Before you get started, it's important that you lay out the text on the screen where you want it to end up when it's done animating. So this is where I want flip down to be after the animation runs. To make this work in 3D, I need to set this to a 3D layer. So I'm going to come down here in the timeline and I'm going to make sure that my flip down layer is a 3D layer. I can do that by check marking this box right here on the layer. If you don't have these switches or these icons right here, just right click on one of the columns and choose switches and make sure it's checked. So to make this a 3D layer, I'm going to check mark that. So I have a 3D icon next to it. And I'm going to click on the text. And now the most important thing I can do right now is set this anchor point. The anchor point is right here. It's a red circle, but it also has the X, the Y, and the Z axes showing because this is a 3D layer. The anchor point is important because that is what the text is going to rotate around. So I like to think of it as like the hinge. Where's the hinge going to be in the animation? If I want this text to flip down, I need to move this anchor point up here so it rotates around it. If I wanted it to flip up, I might put it down here. If I wanted it to like slide out or rotate on or flip out on the y-axis, I might put it here. So to move that anchor point, I need to click on the pan behind tool up top, and I can click and I can move that anchor point to where it needs to go. If I hold down Control on my keyboard, it will snap into place. So I'm going to put it right here in the top center, like that. So now what will happen is we're going to animate this text so it rotates around the anchor point up here and it looks like it's flipping down. So to change this or to start this animation, I'm going to twirl down in my layer to transform, and I'm going to have X rotate. I can also do this in the Y direction if I wanted to make it like a flip out, kind of like this one. But I'm going to work in the X direction. So I'm going to click the stopwatch next to X rotation. And I'm going to kind of go ahead about, I don't know, maybe 10 frames. I'm going to set another keyframe there. And I'm going to set a third keyframe somewhere around 13 or 15 frames. These are the three keyframes that are going to control my animation. So if I change the value of the rotation on these keyframes, After Effects will do all the work in between. So on my first keyframe, I'm going to set the rotation right here in the second number to somewhere around 90. It depends on where on the screen your text is. So for me, 99 works. But if you were down here, it might not be that big. Always make sure you know what you're doing here. This number here is the number of revolutions. So if you go past 360, this number is going to go up. So I'm working on 99 degrees here. And when I go to my next keyframe here, I actually want this text to kind of over rotate or rotate past 0. So I'm going to change its rotation to, I don't know, like negative 15 or 16. So now I have this animation here. And then this third keyframe is where the text will actually come back to 0. And I don't have to do anything because I set that keyframe at 0. So to preview this, I'm going to go to the beginning. I'm going to press spacebar. And I have this little flip down animation. If I wanted to make the animation faster, I would move these keyframes closer together. So now I have something that rotates a lot faster. If I wanted to rotate slower, I would spread them out a little bit. I always think that on this animation though, you want these two keyframes, the over rotate and the 0, to be kind of closer together. And I can drag an individual keyframe by clicking on it and moving it. So I'm going to kind of move these again, kind of back to where I want it to be. And this is how the animation works. Now, again, that anchor point is really a big deal. So if I were to like change the anchor point here after I have these keyframes made, and let's say I move it into here, now it's going to rotate around that. So now it rotates around the middle like this. If I move it down here to the bottom like this, now my text actually flips up. Flip down is probably not the best words for it. If I wanted to do this on the sides, I would move my anchor point over here, but I would make my adjustments or my keyframes in the Y rotation over here. I'm going to quick move that back to where it goes. So I'm using pan behind. I'm going to put control like this right here. So this is my basic animation. Now there's two ways we could improve this quickly. And the first way is that at the beginning of the animation, if I click off of it, I can still see it here. And maybe I don't want those words to appear right away. So in the timeline, I'm going to scroll up and I'm going to say this layer needs to start at 1 frame instead of 0. See, I'm at 0 frames right here. If I move this down to 1 frame like this, I actually don't see my text. And then it flips down. So that's one way I can improve it. The other way to improve it is called easy easing, or adding an easy ease to these keyframes. And what that does is it just kind of lets After Effects kind of work its magic to make the frames kind of slow down and speed up so it looks a little bit more natural. So to add an easy ease to these keyframes, I'm going to click on them, right click and hit Keyframe Assistant and choose Easy Ease, or I could press F9. And when I do that, you can see the icon for my keyframes changes to like 2 diamonds stacked up on top of each other. So if I add an easy ease to these keyframes and I press spacebar now, I get a much smoother animation, or a little bit more natural looking. If I made a mistake, I can always delete a keyframe by clicking on and press delete. To remove an easy ease, the easiest way is to hold down control and click on it like that. So now I removed my easy ease. I'm going to put it back on though. So that's how you can animate text in 3D for your Kinetic typography assignment.